Hello, this is Leah. I hope you guys are all here and able to hear me and see me and everything is good. I'm doing an experiment where I hope you can see two things, a lesson picture and me together. And I'm hoping this really works. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a series from Answers in Genesis called Answers for Kids. And it basically is going to take answers that a lot of you will think about yourself, or maybe other people will ask you. And I want to be able to help you be able to show from the Bible and from science the answers that God has for you in these things. Now, this lesson might be geared a little more towards the older children, perhaps 6 and up. Now, the younger children, if they want to listen, you guys are more than welcome to listen to as well. And I would even encourage teenagers to listen to this lesson, as it can be helpful for you too. So I'm going to talk today, first of all, about if you can know that God really exists. Is there really a God? And we're going to talk about an example from science that shows us that there is a designer. Before we do that, let's go ahead and open up with a word of prayer. Dear Jesus, I pray that you would help the kids to be able to listen, even though it's a video recording. I pray that you would help them to be able to understand, and that you would use this lesson to make a difference. And Father, I pray that we would be able to find the answers to our questions in your word. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so we're going to talk about, is there really a God? In the very, very beginning of the Bible, in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If you have a Bible and you want to pause it right now and go ahead and get it, then you can look up that verse. This is something that is questioned often. Right in the beginning of God's word, it assumes that God exists and that he's the one who created. We're going to go through some verses and a science lesson. Really quickly, what I want to do is I want to read this verse together with you. And this verse is in Psalm chapter 90 and verse 2. You should see it on the screen in front of you. If you can read it along with me. Psalm 92. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. Now those are some old words, but what that is saying is before anything in the world was even made, God was still God, from everlasting to everlasting. That is something that is amazing and exciting, and I love that about my God. Now, many people will say, how do we know that the Bible tells the truth? Or they don't trust that the Bible really knows what happened at the beginning of the world. We're going to go over questions in these next few weeks, like, is how many years old is the world? Or did God really create the world in only 6 days? Or did it take millions of years? And who can tell me, in the very beginning of the Bible, it starts with 4 words, in the beginning. What's the next word? I read it earlier, and you might have looked it up in your verse. In the beginning, God. Some people don't believe that God exists. I just pulled up a World War II code breakers picture, and I want to tell you a little story. In 1942, in World War II, there were a lot of messages that had to be sent, and they had to be able to communicate, but they had to watch out for spies. If spies intercepted the message, they could totally find out what our troops were doing or where we were going or what our plans were, and then they could beat us. So they had to come up with a plan for a way to get these messages safely without anybody knowing what they said. Well, there was a man whose name was Philip Johnston, and his parents were missionaries with the Navajo Indians. The Navajo Indians are on the west, they're American Indian tribe, and their language is super confusing and very complicated. Well, he said, what if I use the Navajo language to send our message? So he used a code. what they would do is they would send several Navajo words in a row. For instance, they would say something like, let's see if I can say the Navajo right. Sa wolachi aka diglingling. Sa adzo. And someone who knew Navajo on the other side would take those words, and each word they would translate into English. And then the English letter that word started with, just the first letter, is what they would use for their message. So for instance, if we wanted to spell one word, that's what I just read to you is one word. So the first Navajo word was sa. You see it there? What's the English word for it? Needle. And the second word was wolachi. So there it is. And akadiglini. Pretty sure I said that right. And the last word was sa'adzo, which means yucca. All right, so if we take the first letter of each of those words, N, A, V, Y, it spells Navy. And that would be how, in World War II, they would communicate to each other in code. So you should figure out how to say your name using the Navajo code and send it to me on email or text or draw a picture or something. And just like the Marines or the Navy or those who were communicating in this World War II needed to be able to send a message, our bodies need a code as well. That code is called DNA, which stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, just in case you were wondering. So DNA is what stores all the information inside of your body that makes you you. Okay, so see some of the different letters and such on the screen. Those represent little molecules of information that make you what you are. For instance, some of those little molecules will decide what color eyes you have. You have blue or hazel or brown. Some of the molecules will decide what color hair you have. At least what color hair you have when you were born. Some of these molecules will also decide how old you'll be when your hair starts to turn gray or white. And these different molecules inside your DNA are a very specific code that make you you. This code is very confusing. The Navajo code was really confusing. This is even worse because this code is very complicated. All of the machinery in our cells is what helps make us who we are. As time goes by, your DNA is passed down from your parents. So your parents' DNA would be also in you that makes you you, but maybe some of the letters would be rearranged or missing. Do you have, okay, so here's another thing. My earlobes are attached to my face. Do you have earlobes that are attached to your face, or do you have ones that are detached and look more like that? If you were to fold your hands together like this, which thumb is on top? Your left thumb or your right thumb? Your DNA helps determine what will be more natural for you to do. Do it the other way and see how that feels. Feels weird, doesn't it? It's like it's wrong. You're supposed to do it the other way, having the other finger on top. That is part of your DNA code that makes these different things you. Can you do this with your tongue? Some people can, some people can't. It's part of what is stored in your DNA. Now, each one of us has a DNA that is specific and unique. No two people in the entire world ever have the exact same DNA. Might be close. You probably have a DNA a lot like your mom and dad. And a twin would be really close, right?
but nobody has the exact same DNA. So each one of us is a very specific order of these letters that make us in God's image, where God very specifically created this intricate, complicated design to make you who you are. So all this information, all of the letters and all of the DNA that makes you you, what you can do with your tongue, which thumb goes on top when you cross your fingers, what color your hair is in your eye, and how large your nose is, all of these things, who created that? Who arranged that your DNA would be like that? Where did all of this come from? Our DNA, like I said before, is from our mom and dad. Where did they get theirs? From their parents. Who got theirs from their parents? All the way back to Noah, all the way back to Adam and Eve. We all have DNA as a result of changes from Adam and Eve. Now, when DNA is passed down from your parents to you, this is a nice science lesson, right? It will, all that you can be is the information that's in that DNA. It might change the order, which would make your eyes a different color, or it might leave some out. You can see in the picture some of the DNA being left out. But never will new information be added to the DNA. You're not going to have new letters coming in that would give you tail or feathers or ears that stick up on the top of your head like a cat. That's not going to happen because DNA doesn't ever use new information. By the way, that's one of the ways we know evolution isn't true, because you can't change to a different kind of animal or creature because DNA never adds new information. But this information will come in a specific order because God has a specific plan for what he wants you to be like. Look at the letters on the top of this. If we were just going to leave these letters sitting on a table and assume nobody touches them and messes them up, how long would it take before the letters on the top were like the letters on the bottom? 100 years? A million years? How about never? It would actually take someone going in there and picking up the letters and rearranging them to put them in the right order. They don't just move around by themselves. It's the same thing with our DNA, the code that makes us us. It doesn't just move around by itself. It has an intelligent design. Someone has to do that. Who would that someone be? It would have to be God, obviously. God is love. This information is shown through our DNA. And if we know that a greater intelligence had to make the DNA and put it in the right order, that all of the information of our DNA had to come from somewhere. All living creatures have DNA. Cats do. Horses do. What else? Tell me some. All creatures. Humans too. Our DNA is very specific. All that information for all of the different kinds of creatures and all of the different people, all the different dogs even over the years, that's a lot of information. That's a lot of facts. Who would be able to know all that? Who would be able to have all of that in a smart enough way to put it all in the right order to make all these different creatures and include the right information for each different one? The only one who could have been powerful enough and smart enough to know all that and do all that is God. There has to be God. He gave the first creatures enough information, like dogs, so that they would pass down in their DNA information that would always be the same. A dog is always going to have a puppy. A cat is always going to have a kitten. It doesn't ever happen that a cat has a puppy. It doesn't happen. Real science confirms God exists. It's the same way as with the dogs and cats. We're the same way. Our DNA always has the right information. We will never become a monkey, and we never were a monkey either. Our DNA has to have the right information. All of this information that I'm sharing with you is very deep, and it's very much a scientific lesson. But it all proves that there is a God, that God does exist. We're going to talk about more things like that and different kinds of lessons also. But I want you to remember that you are made special, and you are you because God made your DNA specific. And your DNA is so complex and so complicated that it proves that there is an intelligent designer who is God. Let's look at our verse again, and let's say it together again. Okay, are you ready? Psalm 90, verse 2. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. Let's play a little game. All right, let's take away a word and see if we can say it again. We're going to memorize this verse together. All right, mountains. Can we take away mountains? By the way, before the mountains were made, did God exist? Yeah, he had to in order to make them, right? Okay, ready? Psalm 90, verse 2. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. Psalm 90, verse 2. Forgot to say that again at the end last time. All right. What word should we take off now? Ready? Everlasting, but there's 2 times everlasting were said. So we're going to take them both off. Think we can do it? Everlasting means it lasts forever. All right, here we go. Before the world was brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth. Uh-oh, I said it wrong. Before the mountains, it says mountains. Okay. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou, oh man, I forgot to say the reference. Let's try it. Ready? Psalm 90, verse 2. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Psalm 90, verse 2. All right. Okay. Brought forth. Let's try it. Psalm 90, verse 2. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Psalm 90, verse 2. All right, you ready? Let's try it. Psalm 92. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Here comes the next one. Okay, Psalm 90, verse 2. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. This is the next to last one. We're almost done. Here we go. Psalm 90, verse 2. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Psalm 90, verse 2. It's getting really hard. All right. One more time. This is the last time we're going to say it. Here we go. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth, the world, and the earth, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. I think it's earth and world, isn't it? Psalm 90, verse 2. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Call me this week if you think you can say this verse to me. Okay? Your parents can find my number, or you can call me on Facebook. I would love to chat with you because I miss you guys. But can you tell me this verse from memory? I want to be able to hear it better than I was saying it because I just messed up a whole bunch of times. Must be getting old or something. Also, if you want to talk about, is God real? More. I'd love to chat about that with you. All right, so if you want to do an activity with your parents about this, you can make a family tree. You can put Adam in there and Noah in there, but then maybe just start back with your grandparents or your great-grandparents, or if your parents want to go even further back than that, that might be fun. If you want to make a family tree, do it and send me a picture of it. I'd love to see it. Also, all of those people in the family tree have DNA containing the same information because God is an intelligent designer. All right. I love you guys. I can't wait to see you face to face and chat with you on Sunday. We'll see you later. I'm going to figure out how to leave this lesson here.